just run through, this is what I'm going to try to aim to do today. So we'll discuss it, and I'll give you a quick video on some of the usability and so on, and how to think about usability as a whole across the board, both from the user's perspective and you as an organization or a group of agencies out there that need to make things accessible out there as well. So let's go get into this. So we've talked about why accessible PDF, why PDF UA versus the WCAG 2.0, level AA standard, and so on, and your minimum requirements. Definitely you can use PDF UA to achieve WCAG 2.0, A, level AA, and so on. But really, what I'm trying to talk to you about is how do we aim it at the electronic document and use on assistive technologies out there. So you need to consider both sides of things because you want to be efficient. And Carl talked about this a moment ago about how you can get things done faster using certain automation tools. And Stephanie definitely hit it home by saying, there are tools out there that can do this. So you want to do it as efficiently as possible. So I won't go through this, 14289-1, 2012, great numbers and so on. The WCAG standard, what happens if we go from WCAG 2.0 to 2.1 and so on as we go forward into the future? What about the test cases that you have to go through? There's, for WCAG, there's about 25 level A test cases. There are 13 test criteria for level AA. But when you talk about PDF UA, you've got about 250 test cases that you have to go through as well. So can you automate the testing side of that as well? So those are considerations by looking at the type of tools that you're using for testing as well, and you need to consider as you move forward. So what about assistive technology? Well, I'm sure a lot of you have heard about these things out there. JAWS, job access with speech. Is that a accessible PDF or PDF UA compliant screen reader? Anybody know? Actually, it isn't. It's a great screen reader. Fills in the gray areas. Reads the information back to you very efficiently. NVDA, non-visual desktop access. Definitely a PDF UA compliant screen reader, and very much focused on accessible PDF reading and so on. Free, and of course, it was built by the Swiss, by their Institute for the Blind and so on. So you need to consider these various tools. There's refreshable braille displays out there that have preprocessors that will take in that information. You have simple tools like these, smartphones. Apple is a great idea of one item as well. And of course, you can talk about things like Android with TalkBack and so on. But there's other things like Zoom Text, Cobra Pro, Win. All these various tools out there are being used in one way, shape, or form. And it's really shaping the way that accessibility is going to move forward. When you can access the information on these devices, that means you've got now websites that are smart enabled at this point. You've got the underlying documents behind those websites that also need to be accessible at that time. So these tools are being now used, obviously, to connect refreshable braille displays. So that PDF that you're using that you've just tagged now is being driven into a refreshable braille display, a refreshable keyboard, braille keyboard, and so on. So that PDF has multiple usages as you move forward. So as I talked about it, you need to consider, and this is really what we talk about, inclusion by design more than anything else. If you want to ensure that everybody is included in the use of those documents or those websites and so on, you need to very much look at the inclusion by design on how things are authored. And when we talk about that, we talk about things from transaction documents, high volume documents that need to be automated, whether you be SSA, HHS, IRS, and so on. Lots of personalized, confidential, private information that now needs to be made accessible. And those can be automated very easily with various tools. Desktop publishers, those that are publishing static documents and so on, must have the ability to easily publish those documents. So, what are those tools and what are the processes? I mean, when we talk about the assistive technology side of things, and I'll show you a video shortly about one of my colleagues who is blind, and she uses a refreshable braille display connected to her iPhone on a day-to-day basis. She'll use a note taker as well. And of course, she uses a Mac or a PC-based device with a screen reader based on that as well. So again, consider the usage of those documents. I mean, if we're talking about math documents, tagging a math document with MathML and so on, yeah, difficult and hard, and these devices may or may not read that information very clearly. So you need to consider your source and who you're actually delivering that to ultimately at the end of the day. As we talk further about it, let's just talk about the refreshable braille display really quickly here. Let's see if I can hit the play button here. So,
Okay, it's a little bit quiet, but 2016, Dennis is showing you on the screen as well,
that's me showing you.
2016 tax computation worksheet, line 44. So that's the H1, and it would navigate, I can hit H, and it will navigate to headings of any level that will appear throughout the document. And right below that, I can, if I hit G, that takes me to anything throughout the document, any image that's tagged with alt text. So in this case, the icon right below the heading, it says caution, and then below that I've got, see instructions, et cetera, et cetera. So that's another way that a user can navigate, not a primary way, of course, to navigate by graphic, by image, but it just shows you how the alt text is really important. So the last thing that we're going to do is we're going to look at a table. So I hit T, and then I'm in the table, and there's a couple different ways I can navigate it, but what I'll do is just show, right now I'm in row 1, column 1, which is blank. So I'm going to go down to row 2, column 1, which is taxable income. I navigate across, and it takes me to the next column over where it says, and I'm just going to read it so you know what I'm getting. A, enter the amount from line 43, et cetera. Navigating, by the way, the way the user will navigate within the table is primarily by using the arrow keys. That gets you from one row to another and one column to another. So I can just navigate across to B, multiplication amount, et cetera. I can navigate up and down throughout the file. So row 2, column 4 is, would be, let's go down here to row 3, column 3 times 28%, 0.28. Those are all the different things I can do. And just one last quick thing that is a really useful thing with these properly tagged tables is that, you can see that there's, some tables can be many, many rows and many, many columns, and the end user can navigate to, say, for example, row, 3, column 4, whatever it may be. And by simply going into table mode, there's actually a few ways you can do this. You can hit one command and it will say not only the content of the cell where you currently are, but it will also, before that, it will say the header of that column, so that if you see something like 28%, you're not left wondering, oh my goodness, 28% of what? It'll say what the column header is so that oh, it's 28% of, such and such amount or whatever that may be. So by properly associating the data and the table data and the headings within the table, it makes it really quite straightforward for the end user to get all the information that's conveyed in that table.
Well, thanks, Jen, for giving me that information. Obviously, as we navigate through here, and we're just using Adobe Acrobat to show you that, it's critical to note the tools, again, that are being used at this point in time. So, and one of the tools could be, how this down arrow works here. I think I need some accessibility now. Great, thank you. So we come back to the training side of things, as always. I mean, Adam this morning talked about the fact that the Ontario government in Canada spent tried to train 65,000 employees, spending millions of dollars out there, and that's kind of a difficult way of trying to, shotgun everybody out there and trying to learn how to do accessible documents in a single shot. So there must be strategies that you need to consider to ensure compliance and how to best deliver that. So as we talk about that, you want to ensure that you have that inclusion first of all. Compliance, a lot of people ask, can you be sued? Can you whatever? We've talked a lot with the advocates out there and so on. And they all talk about the fact, yeah, you know what? If it's anti-discriminatory, absolutely you're going to be sued in those situations and so on. But for anybody who's trying to, at their best effort, to make things accessible, there has not been a lawsuit at this point in time that has gone out there in any way, shape, or form. But as we talk about things like Title I and Title II and Title III of the ADA side of things, which, the Rehabilitation Act sits under and below as Section 508 in the ICT refresh. You need to consider what is the right technique to ensure, and what is the easiest technique that you're going to take your archived documents that you have, which may be in scope or may not be in scope, and you want to also consider the documents that you're creating from this point forward. There are different tools and different ways that you need to consider, but one of the good things to note is that this is not just you doing it. The whole world is doing it at this point in time. Adam talked about AOTA. There's EN 301549. There's a number of different acts that's coming out of the UK, Australia, and so on. So any documents that you're doing now, it's a good thing for your global population that's out there as well, as far as consuming that information. So let's talk about ways to remediate. We talked about manual remediation, right? That's a very slow methodology of trying to deliver a document. There's things that you can do manual remediation with tools, and there's a lot of great tools out there that are plugins and so on. Of course, there's auto tagging, which allows you to tag everything very quickly. You probably won't achieve 100%, and that's the number one thing that we've learned today is you probably won't achieve 100% when we talk about auto tagging, but you can do a lot of cleanup at the end with the specialists, if you will. So your editors or the accessibility specialists at the end can now sort of take care of thousands of documents that are tagged in seconds, and then sort of remediate those and fix the necessary requirements, like things like alt text or tables within tables and so on. Those are critical items that I don't think, in my lifetime anyways, that we'll be able to easily solve. I mean, we're talking about design. And of course, there's automated business rules for those transaction-based documents, like your invoices, your 401k type documents, your financial disclosures, your pay stubs, and so on. These are all critical where you can build templates so that you have a post-composition workflow using inbound, print description language files or print-ready files from whether it be a PDF, an AFP file, a PostScript file, or whatever the case may be. So these are some of the critical things. Of course, as we talk about how documents can be remediated, we very much know, you can use those high-volume templates in those structured document environments, but more so for static type documents, you've got to consider other tools like, Adobe Acrobat Pro. There's the NetCentric Common Look tools that are out there as well. And there's a lot of new breeds of auto tagging tools. But before you consider all that, you also want to look at ways to do that. There are new emerging tools that are on the web, cloud-based tools, and if your security allows you to use those or test those, there's probably going to be a perpetual license or a license solution available that you can put in behind your firewall. So when you consider that, you don't need to worry about the fact that I have to train every single person in my organization around tagging. I can perhaps use a central server now where I can send documents to so that individuals out there that are authoring in Word or InDesign and so on, and perhaps able to create a PDF, now can send it to a central server for quick remediation at that point. So real quickly, you've got transaction, variable content, business rules based. Those are templates and so on. They basically can crush documents tagged using a template, virtually thousands and thousands of pages per second. But of course, you have to spend all your time up front setting it up, which is costly, but then you have the benefit on the back end to be able to create those documents with quality control on the front end very quickly. So those things are things like utility bills, your insurance policies, it could be loans, it could be banking type documents, health type documents, health insurance type documents, and so on. Marketing information, brochures, flyers, and so on. Again, manual remediation with those plugins, and then auto taggers are very much in scope in that area. And then, of course, publications, books, magazines, and annual reports, and so on. Making sure that you have the proper read order, top to bottom, left to right. Again, you want to be able to find a way so that you can crush through those types of documents very quickly again. And again, things like auto taggers may be able to help you in that space so that you can remediate quickly a large amount of content so that you can then have the specialist deal with the final touch-ups and so on. So I won't go through this as far as the industries are concerned, but I think everybody knows in each industry you're getting a lot of mail and the future is electronically delivered documents. So the PDF methodology and the accessible PDF and the PDF UA solution is the way of the future as far as consumption on electronic based devices out there. So you have to consider that as part of where you're going. We talked very much about the fact that high volume documents again need specific software and tools, and there are a lot of vendors that are here today, including ourselves, that have the ability to offer that type of a solution. So, I know we've talked about folks from HHS, SSA, IRS, whatever the case may be. These types of solutions are available, and they're operating in many, many organizations today to ensure that those types of documents that are highly structured in nature can meet those requirements. Ad hoc documents or on-demand remediation. This is really where you want to consider things that you're going to present a document. It could be a variable document. It could be somebody building a brochure online using a web-to-print technology. You may not always want to store those accessible documents that have been pre-tagged. This morning we heard about the fact that certain tools tag every single letter, every single word in a PDF file. Of course, what happens, you get massive PDF bloat as a result, and a simple file of 80K may bloat up to 800K or even to 5 megabytes in the examples that we've seen in the industry so far. So if you can create templates along the way and you can also remediate on the fly, that's another way to consider how dynamic presentment of documents can be done as well. We talked about auto tagging. I won't touch any more on that. But finally, on the usability side of things, it becomes another issue that's going to be important to consider is preference management. In other words, my mom probably doesn't know how to use a VCR or a DVD player. However, the young kids, will stream everything on their iPhones out there. So your mom, who may be blind or partially sighted, may choose to read Braille or large print, which is a predominant methodology. The accessible PDF setups to tag one set of business rules allows you to go to those other physical formats, because you need to be able to record your preferences out there and use that single document type, which, as we say, is the PDF file, to get to those other formats out there so that accommodations are met as well. So that also meets your 508, your older 508 guidelines for ICT, right? So consider that as you go forward. And finally, as from a usability perspective, consider the whole entire gamut, because when your customer service agents receive those calls and say, I want an accessible PDF and it's up on the website, that's an easy thing to do. But when they have that next call that says, hey, I need a large print document and I need to see it in a transaction-based read order, then you need to consider how you're going to deliver a transaction document out there in a quick and easy way without doing it as a single one-off type scenario. So this is where we kind of talk about the fact that you need to consider all the various usages of your document for usability. There is no one single preference that is associated to one individual group. If you've learned Braille from an early age, then Braille's going to be, it's not really a preference, but it's a way to go. But as we know, we're authoring documents in PDF. Need to be able to take those authored documents that are being produced in PDF and take them to those other formats as well as part of your workflow. So consider that when you're planning for those accessible documents going forward. And of course, we've had a lot of discussions through the day today around quality assurance, QA, and testing. It's really critical to ensure that you have the right tools in place. Understand what those tools are capable of doing. Don't just believe those tools are going to work each and every single time, depending on the type of PDF that you're creating or the type of tagging that you're doing. Reach out to specialists out there. There's a lot of vendors out there that have the ability to help you along the way, to set you up with the proper tools and so on as part of the way that you need to consider. And certainly, color contrast, alt tag, things like for video and so on to add descriptive information are not covered under the PDF UA side of things, but perhaps covered under the WCAG side of things as well. So you need to consider that as part of your workflow. So hopefully I've been able to pull together a lot of that information that you have today, that you've gathered and sat through. Did I meet my 20 minutes yet? Okay. Well, so we have got about 10 minutes for questions, or you can all run out really quickly. There's a question right here.
I know you have a lot of experience in this area. I've been listening to you for years.
Thank you.
Now, if we design our documents according to Matterhorn,
Yes.
approach,
Yep.
will that tend to be satisfactory internationally?
So most of the rulings around the world right now are aiming at still the WCAG minimum standard at this point in time. You can definitely use the Matterhorn protocol to achieve WCAG 2.0. So if you think about, Section 508 in a Venn diagram is like this. You've got sections in there that are mutually inclusive. and those sections that are inclusive when you do the testing, using the Matterhorn protocol to meet WCAG requirements will absolutely allow you to use it around the world.
I'm interested in like internationally distributed dynamic documents, like invoicing or
Yep,
type of transactions.
yep,
And making sure that we're able to satisfy
the whole world.
criteria
Yeah.
for the whole world, because some places maybe not so much.
So when I talked about that with my professional services team, a lot of folks say we want to use the Matterhorn document, we want to go PDF UA, we also want to be sure that we're WCAG compliant. The best way to do that is look for where the two come together and design your documents and tagging around that, because if you meet the minimum standard between everything there, which is PDF UA and WCAG, then you're going to achieve the best sort of accessible document out there. Any other questions? Wow, we can end early. Yeehaw! Well, thanks everyone for your time.